Assassin's Creed Mirage is easily one of the most underrated games within the Assassin's Creed franchise. It is much smaller in scale compared to the recent RPG trilogy, but at the same time it's also much more focused on certain goals that it tries to achieve. The story, the gameplay, and even the exploration here might not take as much time as in the other games, but this more precise focus allows Mirage to stand out in a way that feels more like a classic Assassin's Creed experience.
Walt Disney Pictures presents Aladdin. The movie Time magazine calls a ravishing thrill ride, an animated Raiders of the Lost Ark. You have to see it twice.
There's honestly something special and magical about Assassin's Creed Mirage. Baghdad looks amazing and almost like a city from 1001 Nights rather than a real place. The developers clearly put a lot of effort into creating it, which can be seen and felt anywhere you look. Each building feels unique and serves a purpose, and it genuinely feels alive. It's very hard to create a world that actually feels real and full of life. Many games fail, such as Mafia 3 that has an interesting map in theory, but gets completely ruined by being mostly dead with barely any level of interactivity or even NPC variation. That's not the case in Mirage. Baghdad is alive. It's living and breathing. You have dense crowds that look different depending on the neighborhood you're in. The NPCs look unique, be it the guards, the merchants, beggars, and thieves. The streets are full of people, and it really feels like you're currently exploring one of the biggest and most famous locations in the world. No matter where you turn, you'll hear merchants trying to sell you something, you will see little kids running around you thinking they can fool you and steal your money. It all feels so dynamic, and you can't help but feel amazed at the level of work that must have gone into creating a city that feels so alive and real. I love how each neighborhood and each street looks different and distinct from each other. More so, the nights here especially look amazing, and you get the feeling that Ubisoft took a lot of inspiration from old medieval paintings depicting Baghdad during its golden days. Even the sun looks different here, be it in the morning, noon, or evening, casting different shades of light and heat. A heat that you can almost feel through the screen because of how amazing it is depicted here. When I was exploring the city, I felt extremely immersed to the point of almost being able to smell and taste all of the oriental spices on the Great Bazaar. I could smell the incense and other exotic smells in the royal palace, almost like it wasn't Basim visiting those places, but me. I actually did not expect to be this immersed in Mirage, especially because I personally did not like Valhalla, and apparently Mirage is heavily based on a lot of the gameplay systems of Valhalla. It even took certain stylistic design choices from Valhalla, such as the bleak, lifeless, and unoriginal looking world map, which is a shame because Origins and Odyssey had an amazing looking map and interface that was specifically themed for their respective time periods and locations. Now, I personally loved Origins and Odyssey, with the only RPG game that I couldn't get into being Valhalla. I'm actually a huge fan of the RPG titles and even a massive fan of all the fantasy elements they introduced. I loved being able to visit the Egyptian underworld in Origins and fight the Great Snake Apep. Same in Odyssey, where the heavy mythological tone was actually the main reason for why I got the game. I personally never cared about any of the Assassin's Creed stories, as in the conflict between the Assassins and Templars. To me, the main appeal of these games has always been the fun gameplay and especially the unique locations. There is no other gaming franchise that gives you the option to explore ancient Egypt, Greece, revolutionary France, pirate era Caribbeans, etc. in such a detailed way. It doesn't just feel like these places are simply set pieces for the game. No, to me it feels like the purest definition of virtual tourism. And it doesn't even matter whether the recreations are 100% historically accurate or faithful. What matters is just how deep and amazing the level of attention to details here is. It's the opportunity to explore long forgotten cities, temples, and tombs in their glory or long before they were forgotten. However, as much as I liked Origins and Odyssey, I have to admit that they were overwhelming games. They were massive in their scope, having huge maps that basically recreated almost entire countries, not to mention hundreds of quests, activities, and gameplay systems that could take you up to 100 hours, if not more, to master or fully complete. But more importantly, they were the type of game that was a lot of fun but could leave you burned out once you finished them. After I finished Odyssey, despite loving the game and now considering it one one of my all-time favorite games, I did feel burnt out and like I needed a break from the franchise. With Mirage, I did not feel like that. The game is much shorter than the previous titles, but because of being shorter, it has much more time to focus on the story, the characters, and lore surrounding the assassins, Baghdad, and the world of Assassin's Creed. It does feel slightly rushed at certain points, but overall it's a fun and really refreshing experience with a lot of cool concepts and ideas. The whole game reminded me a lot of Aladdin, and it has a very 1001 Nights vibe to it in general. I love that they decided to go this route and make it a bit more mystical. There are a lot of references to Arabian legends, stories, folklore, and Islamic mythology, which makes playing this game even more fun because it feels larger than life, just like the previous RPG games.
I'll have your hands for a trophy, street rat!
What's also great is how each neighborhood has its own codex page that gives a lot of historical information on real-life medieval Baghdad, merchants, caliphs, Islamic lore, etc. It's one of the reasons why I love just walking around the city looking at all the cool details that the developers included. Which is a lot, because the city is really big and Ubisoft had to basically recreate it from scratch using old maps, as there's almost nothing left from Golden Age Baghdad today. They even went so far and made sure to get the lighting right, as the sun in Baghdad looks different and feels different from the sun in Egypt or Greece. It's this type of attention to details why I love the Assassin's Creed games so much and why Mirage is one of the most underrated titles in the franchise. The city here feels organic and all you want to do is just explore it for hours, be it by parkouring your way through the rooftops or walking around the bustling city streets. The entire time playing this game, I felt like I was a darker version of Aladdin, hiding in the shadows of Agrabah, robbing and killing anyone I felt deserved it.
See the sorcerer of the black arts, the gold helmet faceless vizier, the death fight of the centaur on the griffin, the six-armed goddess of evil.
What's great about Mirage is that the assassination missions and the entire stealth system here feels much closer to older Assassin's Creed games, while also retaining a lot of the RPG elements that made the previous games so great. Now, the RPG stuff is nowhere near as important or prominent here. Gear, for example, is purely cosmetic and weapons will only change their stats if upgraded or modified. For example, you can put poison on your throwing knives or on your sword, which then will give you an edge in a fight or when killing someone. This makes the game feel even more immersive and you feel more like an actual assassin that has to plan his next moves carefully. The combat here is also harder than in the previous games. Basim can't really take a beating, and drawing your sword for a direct fight with multiple enemies should only be a last resort type of thing and generally avoided, because otherwise you'll die quickly, since sword fighting is not one of Basim's biggest strengths, even if you upgrade all of his weapons and invest points into his fighting skills. That said, he certainly is no pushover, and it is definitely possible to master the fighting to a point where you will be able to slice up your enemies in really brutal ways. I personally find the sword fighting here a lot of fun, despite it being much harder.
He's got a sword! You idiots! With all the swords!
Sticking to the shadows and dark alleys of Baghdad is what actually makes Basim extremely dangerous. The game gives you a lot of tools and ways to approach a mission, and there is a lot of freedom here. It doesn't force you to do a mission or a killing in a specific way unless it's a story-based exception. You can take out your target any way you like, and the city also offers a lot of ways to use the world's environments to your advantage. Mirage also brought back elements such as social stealths, where you can hide among the crowds to escape from the guards or use them to your advantage to kill a target. What's different here though is that if you get caught killing people, you can get into some serious trouble with the law. Here, the crowds can actually notice you performing crimes such as stealing or killing someone. If they do, they will scream, wave their hands, and make sure that everyone knows what you just did. If you manage to escape, there will be wanted posters of you around the city, and depending on how bad your crime was, it will get harder and harder to traverse the city. What's even cooler is how people will react to you differently, and I'm not just talking about the guards but all of the NPCs. I remember one time after killing someone and being wanted for a while, I had a random NPC come up to me and tell me that I should feel ashamed for my sins and that I'm an awful human being.
Call the watch! Here! The outlaw is here! Guard! Guard! There is a vermin sent in our street!
Please!
That was immersive as hell, and it felt like my actions had consequences and some weight to them. Obviously, the wanted system and the notoriety system here is not that deep or complex, but I feel like stuff like this is a great step forward for future titles and not just Assassin's Creed games. I would love to feel the world actually reacting to whatever I do in a game and not forgetting my actions that easily. I also want to mention just how amazing the main theme of this game is. Honestly, to me, the theme of Mirage is easily one of the best Assassin's Creed themes in the entire franchise. It makes you feel right at home, and it fits perfectly to the location, story and character. I loved hearing it anytime I paused the game or was reading through the codex. With the codex in particular, it also felt really immersive hearing that theme while reading about the caliphs of Baghdad or all of the battles and wars that happened in and around the city. It's definitely a place full of rich and exciting history, and the soundtrack of Mirage captures that perfectly. It's a place full of mystery, magic, spices and hidden blades lurking in the shadows.